Hey there, Mike Dunn with Gaming Trend, and we have a special treat today. We have Rowan Hall and Spencer Stark here to talk about Daggerheart. They're from Darrington Press, the publishing arm of Critical Role, and we've done a lot of coverage of you guys in the past. Queen by Midnight
Mm.
has been a favorite of ours, and of course we've done some Daggerheart coverage in the past as well as some of the other stuff you guys are doing, but this is just Daggerheart. Also, I'm remiss. I feel like I should introduce one of my lead TTRPG editors at Air Gaming Trend, who is here to help us kind of dig in, sift through the soil, so to speak, of Daggerheart with you guys, and that is John Farrell. Um,
Done archaeology before, so I'll be good at sifting through dirt.
yes. I used to play in sandboxes when I was a kid, so that's where I developed my skills. But anyway, Rowan Spencer, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having
Thanks
us
for
on.
making time.
Fantastic. Well, I know a lot of people are really excited about Daggerheart. I know we've been looking at it for a couple of years now. Um, I myself have demoed it twice,
Mhm.
both interestingly enough at Gamma Expo this
Oh,
year,
cool.
earlier this year and last year, um, with you guys. But and I know John has taken a look at some of the early material that you guys released publicly, and we've done a write up of that as well. So we are curiously prepped for this.
Yeah.
So so yeah, let's get into it. Daggerheart, how we're getting close now, aren't we?
Yeah, it launches May 20th, so we're
Oh my
just really
gosh.
excited. I've been working on the project off and on for it'll be 4 years by the time it launches. So
Oh wow.
there's been lots of projects in between, but it has been 4 years since like I first set down the the inkling of an idea here at Darrington.
And
So
now you're less than 30 days out.
yeah, now we're less than 30 days out.
You're not nervous or anything,
I'm
are
not
you?
nervous at all. No, totally fine.
Well, awesome. Gosh, so I guess everything's pretty baked in at this point, huh? Like, there's no more testing. You're probably at the printers as we speak, right?
Yeah, we really lucked out. The beta, we had 150,000 people
Oh,
participate
wow.
in open beta. So that was our opportunity to get try out all the different things, get all the notes back, and now the final is, I guess, finished baking to
Yeah.
continue the analogy. So we'll get to see. I hope everybody feels like they see all the input that they gave us in the final book. We're really excited to show people that we took their notes very seriously and we iterated and
Yeah.
present the game in its final form.
It was a little bit over a year ago that I saw the playtest or beta, which was much more complete than most are at that stage. So I am really interested to hear, with the time of feedback, what things that you've seen that surprised you or any major changes you've made.
Yeah. Well, it was really cool launching it uh as fully formed as it was, and then allowing ourselves to go like what works, what doesn't,
Mm.
right? Because I think that there's an opportunity to be able to there's sort of it's a couple different paths, right? There's the path where you kind of lock down and go like, no, we're only making tiny tweaks, and then there's like, no, let's listen to what the game needs and what the audience is saying, and so while still staying true to like the the pillars of what the game is. And I think we were very lucky in that we had the freedom to be able to go like, hey, we're putting a thing out there, and like, oh, this particular piece isn't working, let's change it, let's just change it. And we were able to make many changes over the course of the open beta that I think the people who were involved saw the game kind of evolve. We were doing kind of 3 week sprints on our side, with the fourth week to get everything prepped for delivery to the public. And so we were iterating really fast as far as versions are concerned.
Yeah.
And we're really excited because then we were always one sprint ahead in some respect. And so by the end of it, we had some really great piece of feedback that we were implementing with internal playtesting, large and just like at the office, large scale, and like just us playing too, that we really got to bring back home for the final couple of months before delivery and hone everything in. And so, yeah, we've really used all the pieces that everybody has given us between open beta, closed beta, and everything in between. So it's been a journey, but I feel really proud of where we landed with it. So.
Fantastic. Now I imagine it was pretty hard. It was I guess a colossal feat to synthesize all of that user data. Um, was there anything that really kind of stood out that 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 really precipitated a change in what you guys were doing?
Well, synthesizing the data was in large part the job of our producers, Elise and Madigan, and we could not have done it without them. It takes such a big team to collect data, synthesize it, keep all the people moving in the right direction. So, right off the bat, we had a lot of people helping us organize the feedback. I think my favorite tweak was armor.
Yeah, we ended up tweaking armor right near the end to streamline it into being something that felt like it was in line mechanically with the rest of the game. And that was a big piece that came out of like people being really excited about the streamlined cinematic kind of like, the fights being fast, the nature of the game being uh allowing for very fast play, and armor was a sticking point for us, and it was a really cool mechanic. I like the mechanic and how it works, but it wasn't right for this game.
And you literally had a eureka moment when you finally cracked the armor in its final form.
I did, and so like I was sort of just like banging my head against the wall for months, going like, okay, I know that we can fix this, and some people really like it, especially people that were some people really liked the original armor, but as you got higher and higher in levels, it slowed down the game more and more and more, and we were like, we can make a change here that is more in line with the pillars of the game, and then give people the opportunity to opt into doing that kind of math via certain classes and things if they want to. And so there was really an alignment thing of like core system versus like opting into certain experiences by making certain choices. And so we want to provide that opportunity while keeping the core game really streamlined. So that was one of the big ones that came out of the playtesting and seeing, that was the thing that I think that surprised us most, was like, oh wow, this is something that people are kind of split on, but the people that were really focused on the narrative side of the game, we saw a pretty strong response of like, hey, this slows it down, especially once you get into higher levels.
So would you say that in a lot of things you kind of erred on the side of helping the narrative of a game as opposed to like crunchier rules?
Yeah, for sure. I think if you're looking at Daggerheart as far as like where it falls on the spectrum of games, if we have the D&D in the middle and the Pathfinder on the right of that, Daggerheart falls to the left of that. It's sort of in a space between like the Forged and the Dark sort of design philosophy, probably the Apocalypse kind of design philosophy, and D&D. So it sort of sits in that like more narrative focused, more and a little bit OSR too, in like the rulings over rules kind of space. Shadow Dark is obviously something that I adore, and I think that's Daggerheart is not Daggerheart and Shadow Dark kind of sit in different areas, but as far
They
as
almost rhyme.
yeah, they almost do. Yeah, they almost do. Right. They kind of sit in different areas of the experience that you're looking for with them, sort of being OSR and narrative. But in some respect, there's a really cool kind of synergy that we found of like, oh yeah, it's that like we bring the rules that we think you need, and then you provide the rulings at the table to mediate those.
From a designer standpoint, when we were beginning tackling different classes, different ancestries, different communities, we were always asking, what story are we trying to tell with these? What doors do we want to open for players to be able to put narratives on, and then designing mechanics to support that ask?
I'm particularly interested in that challenge because when you're entering the space of fantasy RPG, There's obviously a lot of assumptions people might bring in as what the setting looks like. There are elves and there are dwarves, and here are their relationships. So, how did you go about navigating that and deciding how you wanted to approach it and what elements you would include or exclude or modify for Daggerheart?
I think genre tropes are one of the most fun parts about designing TTRPGs personally.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
I
For
think
me, yeah.
you and I love a trope.
Yeah,
And I think being able to support some of like the classic details that people expect, like I think a lot of times when we're looking at different classes, like I don't know, a ranger, it's suddenly now I'm watching Lord of the Rings because I want to know what the hallmarks are. And so being able to make enough space for people to bring in some of their favorite tropes. In the case of the ranger, like the lone fighter wandering the wilderness might be one of those. And then also make space for people to bring in really unique choices that are specific to them, to their individual fantasies in what they play or stories that they've read. Was the most important aspect of that for me.
Yeah, I think experiences really speak to that, the mechanic of experiences, because it allows you to flavor your character in a really cool way and get bonuses for your character based on those experiences. And so it kind of does two things. One of them is like it allows you to like be good at a thing that your character has experience in. So like if I was ranger, it might be like, climbing. I might just be an expert climber, right? And I can use that, and whenever I'm climbing stuff, like I get to do that. But it might also be something broader, like pirate. I'm really good at being like anything that has to do with pirate. I can spend a hope and be able to bring that in. But also, it makes makes the player think about the character from an approach standpoint of like, oh, I get a bonus. I can get this bonus if I do it piratey. So my character has that experience. They would approach it from a piratey standpoint because that's where they come from. So it almost like shifts the way that players interact with their characters into playing their character in some respect. It encourages that because you get the bonus by doing what your character is good at.
We do have a joke on the team that every class, every ancestry, every community should be able to also support the experience of pirate because it's one of our favorite examples. So like you build a wizard, but they also have to be able to support the idea that someone is a pirate wizard.
So good.
But buckled in swashes, man.
Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
we're really focused on like trying to make those kinds of mechanics, the mechanics like experience, I feel like they kind of take the lead in supporting narrative and reinforcing that this game is always fiction first.
As far as that's concerned, other than pirate / corsair / privateer, you want to give players a lot of freedom to decide what kind of stories they want to play. But that being said, the game is built with some tone or narrative in mind. So what do you think is the strongest thrust of Daggerheart, either mechanically or thematically, that you're trying to tease out?
Oh, that's such a good question.
I think for me, it's that it's a heroic role-playing game.
100%.
It's that it really leans into like what it means to be a hero, and that often times means that for us that means like the player characters are powerful even from level 1. Like they're pretty good, they're competent, right? They're not superhumans, but they're good at what they do. But I also think that means that they have to face adversity because the whole thing that makes a hero is facing adversity. And so having that sort of hope and fear mechanic and allowing the GM to gain fear and spend fear and, make moves and these kinds of things really reinforces that like the journey of a hero is to struggle and fight back against the darkness and then overcome it. And in that overcoming, that is the formation of a hero. And they're strong enough to be able to do that. And so I think that's sort of the thrust, I think, of most of sort of base Daggerheart is that heroic experience.
I think for me, looking in particular at ancestries and community is one of my personal pillars was that anyone can be a hero in Daggerheart. So even looking at, say, like a Slyborn community, even a scoundrel can be a hero.
Right.
And not only creating narrative scaffolding that supports someone who starts as a hero, like classic fairy tale knight in shining armor, but supporting the anti-hero arc, supporting someone who maybe even starts as a villain, being able to go on a hero's journey was really important. And I hope when people look at domain cards and see the narrative tags, they see their spells described, that they feel that that writing is kind of like supporting them, like a friendly kind of push forward. Like no matter what creative flavor you put on this, you feel that the mechanic and the description and the writing is supporting you to go even that little step further towards what you imagine in your own head and bringing that to the table so that everyone else can experience it with you.
Yeah, I think one more thing to add there is that we're playing in the fantasy genre, and that genre is pretty wide, right? Like as a genre, there's so much that you can do with fantasy. And so we created campaign frames as a way to niche down into, okay, I love that we're all playing fantasy. Love that we're coming here to play this fantasy game. What kind of fantasy do we want to lean into? What kind of like sub genre are we interested in? And how can we utilize the tools from those campaign frames to really like focus our table into that kind of story,
So in the
that
book,
direction.
people will find political fantasy, post-apocalyptic sci-fi fantasy, Wild West, Colossus Slayer fantasy, all as campaign frames that they can build on.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, no, actually that kind of that cues up a question that I had. Mostly because I only had two very limited experiences with
Yeah.
Daggerheart so far, and they were in short, truncated demo environment
Sure.
situations. It definitely had me wondering, like I could see the mechanics in the moment and what and get an idea of what the game was trying to do, but the one thing that has been kind of a black box for me has been like around campaigns, like that kind of epic long, like, yes, everybody has to meet in the same place at least once a month kind of thing. And if you don't show up, then the guy sitting next to you is going to play your character for you, right? um like I'm really curious as to what kind of tools you've given the game master, and what kind of plans you have around campaigns in general, like going forward with Daggerheart.
I don't have a favorite child because that would be not fair to say, but if I did have a favorite child, it would be campaign frames.
Nice.
One of the things that we really wanted to work towards when we were building Daggerheart was investment from the players in campaigns, so that and also taking some of the lift off the GM so they don't feel like they have to bring every idea, every creative design to the table fully fleshed out. So there are a lot of tools throughout Daggerheart to support that. Those include campaign frames, which are structures for people to build their unique campaigns on. That is to say, we're presenting a world, we're presenting conflict, we're presenting tweaks to the design and even sometimes mini games, but also leaving room open for the GM and the players to bring their own ideas to the table. My favorite are the tileable maps.
Oh yeah, well I think one of the other pieces, and I'll kind of speak on those tileable maps through this, is like we have a whole GM section that not only goes through like mechanically how is the how do you GM Daggerheart, but also like philosophically and narratively, like what are the tools that you need to be able to run a one shot, a short short run, and then like a long term campaign. So we have like it teaches you how to take the background questions from your characters and take the like connection questions and then integrate those into the campaign itself, how to build your campaign around your characters being protagonists. And then one of the other big tools that we have is like if we're in a session 0 and we're all building out our characters and talking about the campaign we want to run, one of the things you can do is the GM can take one of the maps that's in the book and one of the blank maps and pass it around the table, and the players just get to add stuff from their backstory to the map. They get to add like things. There's like a list of things at the bottom that they can be like, oh, the Dragon's Peak. I like that. I'm going to cross it out. I'm going to add it to the map here, and I'm going to explain what the Dragon's Peak is, what I think the Dragon's Peak could be. And then the GM takes all of that once the map is done, that they're also adding to themselves, and they use that as the basis for the campaign. And so essentially they get to like pull the entire table in to say like, this is our story.
One of my favorite, actually smaller sections in the GM section is a table that we made kind of breaking down story structure in a way that a GM can weave in different aspects of a story throughout a campaign arc. And it was us as game designers. One of our writers has a background in writing for TV for a very long time. One of our designers is also a novelist. And so a bunch of people from a bunch of different writing backgrounds were sitting down and putting our heads together and saying, okay, for folks who might be brand new to playing a TTRPG and might be brand new to story structure, how can we break this down in its simplest form so that it feels very approachable and also almost like give additional mechanics just for story?
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Well, great. I can't wait to dig into that part of the book for sure.
Yeah.
Now I know there are a few things that well, there was one thing in particular that John was very critical of in
Oh
his
no.
preview last year. And yes, I'm totally putting him on the spot for this. Um, but it is something that in the two demo plays that I had felt a little loose
Mhm.
to me. And it's probably the one mechanic that I am the most curious about, and that is initiative, or rather the lack of initiative. Now, John, to be fair, full disclosure, John did not care for this. And I was a little less pessimistic about it personally. I thought it was interesting, but I had a few misgivings. Um, Mostly because growing up, I tended to play at tables where we had, for lack of a better term, a few wallflowers, very shy individuals at the table, and I feel like having a lack of having no initiative and just kind of taking turns out of some specified order might. Might overlook some of those less engaged or less outgoing players. Um, I'm really, really curious as to how that was received by your playtesters and how you evolved it over the development cycle.
Yeah, so one of the things we come from very much this world that is playing both like Forge in the Dark, Power by the Apocalypse
Mhm.
games, and also D&D and Pathfinder and those kinds of systems. And you know, the Forge in the Dark, Power by the Apocalypse games don't have initiative, and so
Mhm.
they operate in that kind of storytelling forward space. And so in that narrative driven spirit, we really wanted there are lots of games that have initiative that if that is needed, that can be used to play, you know, used to run combat. For us, it was more important that everything, the combat, the narrative, everything feel like one system. It feels like one story. It feels
Right.
like one experience is happening. It allows people to not just be like, I hit the thing until it dies. Instead, it goes like, what's the story here? What are we trying to do? Maybe I swing and then I talk and then and then I run over and I grab a thing, or what, like it gives some freedom there. And I think that there are tools in the final game that help if you are not used to that style of play, if you aren't coming from a PBTA or Forts in the Dark space, if you are used to that initiative. But for me, we use mechanics to reinforce the kind of play that we're looking for. And we aren't looking to separate combat into its own thing. We're saying like, we're excited about it all feeling like the story. And so we have a couple of tools. One of them is a spotlight tracker that allows you to like track when people have gone and make sure you're spreading the spotlight around. The other one is that players can put tokens on their character sheet, and then they can have a certain number, like 3. And if people are doing things and they act, they can take that token, put it off their character sheet, and then once everybody has them off, then everybody refreshes them back on. That kind of keeps tables that are used to having more like sort of turn-based stuff happening. It helps them to get used to sharing while still providing loose structure. And then also, I think the other thing that's really cool and that Daggerheart kind of asks you to do as a table is to learn how to share. It asks the players to be involved in that process, not just the GM, but if I'm playing, it asks me as a player to look around and go, oh, who hasn't done something? How can I spotlight them next? And that's maybe just something that like this system is asking you to learn as a piece of the system mastery.
Jan.
The thing that interests me the most about this game and the way that that integrates into combat is the hope and fear mechanic and the decisions and the consequences and the economies that leads to. So the best answer I can get to that will come from a year of playtesting data that you have seen that I haven't, and I think is going to be borne out in the final version of the game.
Yeah.
I think that, well, Spenser and I have like a folder full of mechanics that we have tried for certain games and put away and think are like wonderful mechanics, but maybe not the right mechanic for this game, or that game or whatever we're working on. And so in particular for Daggerheart, initiative is something that we play with in our home games when we pick up Pathfinder, when we pick up D&D, and it's something that we don't play with in our home games. But most important to us, like above all, was preserving the flow of the game and preserving the narrative. And so lots of things fell by the wayside because of that. Lots of things were the right choice and the wrong choice. And armor is a really good example of that. And I have found that the people who struggle with initiative, with maybe the staying focused, staying active, sometimes thrive with a lack of initiative. And the people who struggle with a lack of initiative might still look for games that do have initiative. But one thing that we realized pretty early on is that we have to work towards what the game is asking for. And hopefully Daggerheart is presented as a really complete package. Every piece of it is working towards one vision. And then, the next game may be totally different.
I think one more piece I'll add to that too that we're excited for people to feel in play is like when you can jump in at any time, and when the GM can jump in on failed rolls, on rolls with fear, they can spend fear to jump in when the landscape is changing really dynamically and there's the opportunity to respond to the narrative that's unfolding. There's a really cool table wide, okay, as a table, what are we doing? Oh, you can do this here, great, you go do that, and then I'll go do this next. And then it's sort of a discussion between the players as to what they're doing narratively, and we find that to be a really cool piece that I see in other story forward games, that excites me about being able to have in this system, because I don't think there's much on this size of scale of fantasy game that also is asking for you to engage with it that way.
That's fair. Well, looks like we have actually ran out of time, which is unfortunate because John just brought up the hope and fear mechanics. I was hoping we'd get a chance to talk a little bit more about the duality dice, which is one of the favorite things that I've seen in the demos. I thought that was a very clever system that you guys implemented there. In addition to, bringing safety, accessibility, and co-creation into it, and more importantly, how you guys designed it for possible actual play stuff. So maybe we can. We're about to relaunch our podcast, Tabletop Throwdown. Maybe we can have you guys back on maybe after the game comes out, or after we've had a chance to dig into it a little bit more, and have an even nittier and grittier discussion, so to speak.
Absolutely.
If you call, we're there.
We're there.
Awesome,
Let us
awesome,
know.
awesome. And John, I'm totally you're in on that. I'm I'm making that happen.
John would love to like dig into it with you too and go like have you share your experience and have us talk through like what those design decisions were and stuff, because I feel like it's a really cool opportunity to be able to there's lots of people who like have never played with no initiative or are wary of no initiative, and
Right.
I want to invite those players in to say like, yes, it can be scary when it's like a new mechanic and it can feel weird, and like, and there are tools that we've provided to be able to try that if it's something that you want to do. So I would love to have a discussion with you
Of course,
about that.
as players, we always want to solve it by playing
Yeah.
TTRPGs. We're like,
We just want to play with you. Yeah.
Nice, nice, very nice. Well, cool. Well, thanks, Rowan. Thanks, Spencer.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you coming on. And Daggerheart comes out like next, but like in
Yeah. May
weeks.
20th.
Holy
Real.
cow!
Oh,
It's gonna be real. Wow. Well, looking forward to it,
thank
and
you.
looking forward to chat with you all again.
Can't wait.
thank you.